Several local governments appeal to the Interagency Task Force against COVID-19 to place their areas under MECQ. Manufacturers, retailers, and service shops to adopt anti-COVID measures in MECQ areas. Public buses, jeepneys, and trains still not operational under modified enhanced community quarantine. The Labor Department asks for 2.5 billion peso supplemental fund for ACA program for overseas Filipino workers. Government to implement social distancing measures per family in evacuation centers as Typhoon Ambo hits the country. WHO warns the world has a long way to go in the COVID-19 fight.
All low-risk areas for COVID-19 in the country will be placed under general community quarantine beginning May 16. That's 2 days from now. But still, Metro Manila and the entire Laguna Province and Cebu City will be under a modified enhanced community quarantine also from May 16 as announced earlier this week. However, several local governments are appealing to the IATF against COVID-19 to place their localities under a modified enhanced community quarantine. Rosalie Cos is monitoring updates from the Interagency Task Force. Rosalie has more details why.
The guidelines for the modified general community quarantine are still being crafted by the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases. On the other hand, low-risk areas, specifically 8 regions the national government has identified, will be placed under general community quarantine.
For simplicity purposes, general community quarantine muna, no? Sa ngayon po, inaantay pa rin natin yung guidelines. Pero while, so for now, pending the receipt of guidelines of modified GCQ, malinaw naman po ang guidelines sa GCQ that's applicable throughout the Philippines except for NCR, Laguna, and Cebu City.
However, some local government officials in low-risk areas appeal to the IATF to place them under modified enhanced community quarantine. Those include Pampanga and Bulacan officials. They say by placing their areas under MECQ, they can prepare for the quarantine transition. The palace in response assures the government will study their appeals. Rosalie Cos, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Several shops and factories in MECQ areas are gearing up for partial reopening, but only a limited number of workers will come to the workplace physically once the reopening happens. They must also comply with several measures like wearing a face mask and physical distancing. Asher Cadapan Jr., who interviewed a factory supervisor and a motorcycle parts shop owner, will tell us why.
It has been 2 months since most businesses in Metro Manila were forced to stop operating due to the implementation of enhanced community quarantine, which will end tomorrow. As the community quarantine is being downgraded to modified ECQ, some industrial, manufacturing, and retail establishments will be allowed to resume operation, but only 50% of its entire workforce will be allowed to return to the workplace. On the other hand, business operators are ready to comply with the government guidelines, including the observance of physical distancing and other measures against COVID-19.
Iwalay yung tao, para safe din sila, tapos naka-face mask.
Businesswoman Anna Wong also plans to only have one of their 2 mechanics to work in their motor shop while MECQ is being implemented.
I-implement pa rin po namin yung social distancing, di bali po, 1 motorcycle lang po per mechanic. Ganun lang po muna para hindi magiging crowded yung area.
Some hardware stores have signage posted to remind their customers to observe social distancing. Store owners believe that this step benefits not only their employees and customers, but also contributes to the global fight against COVID-19. Asher Cadapan Jr., UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Meanwhile, Metro Manila, Laguna, and Cebu City will wake up to modified ECQ 2 mornings from now, but residents who wish to travel cannot do so. This is because mass transportation in those areas will remain suspended. That means public utility buses, jeepneys, taxis, UV Express, and even Transport Network Vehicle Service or TNVS are still not permitted to operate. Train operations remain suspended as well, including MRT-3, LRT-1, LRT-2, and the Philippine National Railways or PNR. These are part of the new IATF resolution, which also includes its decision on domestic flights. Joanne Nano, who is monitoring updates on transportation, will tell us why.
The Interagency Task Force Against COVID-19 has issued its most recent resolution, which includes the status of transportation in areas that will be placed under Modified Enhanced Community Quarantine or MECQ beginning May 16. Public utility vehicles still cannot operate, including buses, jeepneys, TNVS, and trains. Only public shuttles are allowed. They are expected to transport frontliners and other essential workers. Tricycle drivers or operators may get back to the road, but their operations are subject to exemptions or regulations on their respective local governments. Private company shuttles will be allowed to operate, provided only 50% of the vehicle's capacity is occupied. Private company shuttles must acquire a special permit from the LTFRB if a unit is for rent or hire. Private vehicles are also allowed with the condition that only essential workers can go on board, with a limit of 2 passengers per private vehicle. The Transportation Department encourages the use of bicycles, motorcycles, or e-scooters, but with only 1 passenger. Under MECQ, domestic flights are still prohibited. As for international flights, some are exempted for incoming overseas Filipino workers, while inter-island travel also remains suspended. According to Malacanang, the national government has decided not to reopen public transportation in MECQ to prevent the possible resurgence of COVID-19 cases.
Well, unti-unti, dahan-dahan dahil ayaw po natin mapagaya doon sa ibang mga bansa na nagbukas ng ekonomiya at nagkaroon ng second wave. So kung hindi naman po kaya talaga ng kumpanya na magbigay ng shuttle o kung walang sasakyan yung kanilang mga empleyado, wag na po munang magbukas.
Joanne Nano, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Some jeepney drivers in Manila City are begging for food and financial assistance nowadays. And whatever they collect is what they buy for their entire household's food for the day. Dante Amento tells us why.
Extreme needs forced a group of jeepney drivers to go outdoors and beg for food or financial assistance along the Rizal Avenue, Santa Cruz in Manila.
Nahiya sana manghingi pero tiniis para may makain.
Nueme and other PUJ drivers have lost their jobs since the enhanced community quarantine was implemented all over Metro Manila. And even under the modified ECQ starting on Saturday, May 16, they are not still allowed to operate. They eat just once a day to save money out of what they have collected.
Ako na mamalingke, ako nagluluto, at saka kumain sabay-sabay para pare-pareho.
Meanwhile, Mayor Francisco Isko Moreno Dumagoso says the city government has already given food assistance to these jeepney drivers. But the LGU cannot afford to continue supplying their needs due to lack of resources.
It was the local government unit of Manila gave the first assistance.
Elsewhere in Barangay 210 Santa Cruz, Manila, a group of mothers has been doing the same thing since the other day. They ask for alms from the motorists. They have received food and financial assistance from the city government, but they say it's not enough.
Lalo na sa mga maintenance namin. Kasi po, na-extend na po yung warranty.
Dante Amento, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
And at this point, Harleen Delgado is now at Monumento in Caloocan City on board the UNTV radio mobile booth. Harleen, good evening. What can you tell us about the situation on the road? Is it rainy yet?
Good evening, William. Well, William, here in our location in Monumento Circle in Caloocan City, yes, it has started to rain due to Typhoon Ambo. And yes, William, according to Pag-asa, as of 5 p.m., Metro Manila is under tropical cyclone wind signal number 1. And despite the weather condition, we can still see cars on the road and even some motorcycles and bicycles and even some of our frontliners who are on their way home. William, as mentioned earlier, 2 mornings from now, Metro Manila will be under modified and enhanced community quarantine. Several businesses are allowed to open, but schools, I know students have been wanting to know really when they can go back to their schools. But one of our senators believes the Education Department is not yet prepared to open school year 2020 to 2021 on August 24.
All right, Arlene, tell us why.
Yes, William, the Department of Education has earlier released the monthly calendar for school year 2020 to 2021, which is set to begin on August 24, 2020 and end on April 31 next year. During the hearing of Committee on Basic Education, Arts and Culture this morning, DepEd has clarified that face-to-face classes are still suspended in moderate to high-risk areas. DepEd Undersecretary Tony Umali explains their traditional classroom setup is an option only to areas under the very low risk level of general community quarantine. This pertains to areas that are geographically isolated with no history of COVID-19 infections and very low and easily monitored external contacts, and with teachers and learners living within the vicinity of the school. Schools that will be allowed to resume face-to-face classes must have proper risk assessment and must adhere strictly to health protocols.
Hindi po porket August 24 nga po ay opening of classes, automatic face-to-face kaagad. Yung pagdidesisyon kung ano po yung gagawin ay i-delegate po natin sa region and division offices. Hindi po yan pare-pareho.
However, according to Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, who chairs the committee, the Education Department has yet to finalize its plans in full detail, including the implementation of the minimum health standards and the alternative modes of learning in each school.
Is barely enough time to make our schools safe and get our teachers ready. Simple question ko nga, under the GCQ, ano ba ini-expect ng magulang natin under the GCQ scenario? So yun ang hindi clear, no? Kung ano yung gagawin.
Some senators also expressed support to amend the law adjusting the opening of classes. Republic Act 7797 states the school year shall start on the first Monday of June, but not later than the last day of August. Meanwhile, the department also noted that based on their rough estimates, it will be needing 550 billion pesos to finance its preparation for the minimum health standards for all 22 million students and 1 million teachers, as well as for the learning resources.
To be honest, Mr. Chair, kung gagawin po namin universal yung computation, the need will be more than what we have for 2020 budget. We came up with the 550 billion, but of course, that's so impossible. Even the government is looking for financing for the Bayanihan Fund. We are revising the financing on prioritized activities only. And hindi pa po kami ready for this because we are doing the consultation as we said.
DepEd will conduct a new enrollment validation, noting that they are expecting a number of students to either migrate to public schools or drop out. The Coordinating Council for Private Educational Associations of the Philippines reveals around 2 million students from private schools are expected to transfer to public schools as an effect of the COVID-19 crisis.
We're anticipating the decline in enrollment between 25% to 50%. I think tataas pa yan in the coming days.
Gatchalian adds they will craft a rescue package for the affected private school teachers who are under the No Work No Pay scheme and are not beneficiaries under the social amelioration and small business wage subsidy programs of the government. The Marikina City local government integrates social distancing into its disaster preparedness measures as a new normal on its DRRM protocol. Meanwhile, Marikina shoemakers pivot to making personal protective equipment and face masks to earn income while the community quarantine is in effect. Vincent Arboleda will tell us why.
There are 45 evacuation centers here in Marikina City as the local government unit added 13 more evac centers to its 32 from last year. This is due to the integration of social distancing as part of the LGU's new Disaster Risk Reduction and Management or DRRM protocol. As part of the new normal in disaster preparedness, the Marikina City LGU will reduce the number of evacuees that can stay in a particular evac center. And to do that, it will utilize modular tents.
That will serve as a barrier or protection per family. Kung dati ang isang multipurpose gym, nakakapag-set up kami ng 50 na modular tents, tinitignan namin siguro probably the most na magagamit namin para sa isang multipurpose gym ay 20.
The Marikina LGU and DRRM office is also monitoring the amount of rainfall on Sierra Madre. The city government has also ordered to open the floodgates in preparation for the incoming storm.
Sinisiguro natin ngayon pa lang, may 8 gate doon sa Manggahan Floodway. Ito'y nakabukas lahat para hindi magkaroon ng pagpigil ng tubig doon sa area na yan.
Earlier today, the UNTV News and Rescue team also visited the Marikina shoe industry. We have found out the MECQ has taken its toll on shoemakers. There have been less demand and orders, they say, wanting to survive the COVID crisis and gain some income to feed their families. Several shoemakers in the area pivot to making personal protective equipment and face masks.
Nakita ko po kasi na yun ang parang in demand sa ngayon. Tapos para magkaroon ng extra income pati po yung mga manggagawa namin kasi kailangan po talaga nila ngayon na natigil po ang paggawa ng sapatos at bags.
Another shoemaker is also venturing into making face masks with signature Marikina designs.
Siyempre, ang Marikina ay kilala sa pagsasapatos. Kung gagawa man kami ng mask, gusto namin mailabas pa rin namin ang elemento ng sapatos.
The face masks also has a pocket where a filter can be placed. These masks are washable and can be used multiple times. Since there are still no vaccine for COVID-19, social distancing and wearing of face masks and PPEs are now a part of the new normal. Local government and citizens are also making measures to adapt to these changes. Vincent Arboleda, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Now let's take a closer look at the updated tally of the coronavirus cases around the world. The COVID-19 pandemic has now reached a total of over 4.36 million confirmed cases in 188 countries, regions, and sovereignty. With less 1,000, a high-altitude landlocked kingdom encircled by South Africa as the most recent country to report one COVID-19 case. The fast-spreading disease has claimed more than 270,000 lives, while over 1.5 million patients across the globe have recovered. The United States of America remains to have the most confirmed cases in the world, with a total of nearly 1.4 million known positives, including over 243,000 deaths. India is the only Asian country, other than China, that has reached the top 12 among the countries hit hardest by the coronavirus pandemic. Meanwhile, the Philippines Department of Health reported today that as of 4 p.m., 258 new cases have been recorded, bringing the total confirmed cases in the country to 11,876. We have lost 18 more patients. Now the country's death toll stands at 790. With the help of our valiant medical frontliners, 86 more people have won their battle against the invisible enemy. That brings the total recoveries nationwide to 2,337.
The country's Labor Department is asking from finance officials additional budget. According to DOLE, they need this budget to sustain their support programs for overseas Filipino workers. Ryo Miyake will tell us why.
The Department of Labor and Employment has requested 2.5 billion pesos from the Finance Department for its Abot Kamay ang Pagtulong or AKAP program. DOLE AKAP is intended for OFWs who have lost their jobs either because their employers are affected by the lockdown and other measures being implemented by their host country, or they got infected with COVID-19. Labor Secretary Silvestre Bello III explains that upon launching the program, they targeted only 150,000 OFWs with 1.5 billion peso budget. But the actual number of applications has reached more than that. To date, there are more than 400,000 OFWs applying for DOLE AKAP. So far, DOLE has approved 142,000 applications. Each applicant will receive $200 or around 10,000 pesos.
Alam naman natin na every year, nagpapadala yung ating mga OFW through other remittances of a minimum of $25 billion to a maximum of $30 billion. Kaya kami ay umaasa naman na sila naman ngayon ang dapat natin bigyan.
But there are cases of multiple applications. This is why more than 27,000 applications had been denied. Other reasons for denied applicants are jobs not affected by lockdowns, the OFWs had either been repatriated or had returned to the Philippines before the COVID-19 outbreak, and the OFWs continue to receive their salary from their employers. Ryo Miyake, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The Department of Health, or DOH, clarifies that there is no scientific data to support reports the dengue virus and the COVID-19 virus can interact and cause worse problems to a patient. Aiko Miguel tells us why.
The Health Department prepares for the possibility of a dengue outbreak every rainy season. Now that the country is facing a crisis due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the DOH also faces a great challenge alongside the coronavirus crisis, a dengue outbreak.
The confluence of the dengue, the rainy season, and the expected rise in dengue cases will certainly pose a burden to the health system's capacity.
The DOH, however, eases the fear of some and refutes several reports that dengue virus and coronavirus disease 2019 can interact and may cause worse problems or worsen the condition of a COVID-19 patient.
Wala po kaming scientific data to support that hypothesis. But of course, alam natin na kapag meron kang dengue, ay isa sa mga komplikasyon ng dengue ay ang baga din ang tinatamaan. So kung meron din COVID threat, ay talagang magiging critical o magiging malubang-maluba ang kakalabasan ng kanyang clinical course. At kinakailangan talagang tutukan po ito.
The DOH chief reminds the public to be more cautious to prevent contracting the dengue virus. A person with underlying health conditions is more vulnerable to COVID-19. This rainy season, a person should wear long-sleeved shirts and pants to avoid mosquito bites. Apply FDA-approved insect repellent or mosquito patch on children. Maintain cleanliness. cover water containers, remove stagnant water, drink water and maintain a good resistance of the body against diseases. Close the windows and door screens to prevent mosquitoes entering the house. The DOH assures that although hospitals are managing COVID-19 patients, there is a designated pathway or entrance for other cases like dengue, maternal care, and emergency cases. The Health Department reminds the public prevention is always better than cure. Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Another story of hope and triumph of our medical frontliners has been recorded. A pediatric dialysis patient, at the same time a COVID-19 patient, has been discharged after being admitted in a hospital for 30 days. Medical frontliners comprised of the PGH media team surprised him with greetings, balloons, and confetti. UPPGH spokesperson Dr. Jonas Del Rosario said the boy is a regular dialysis patient in the hospital. Everybody considers this as a miracle that despite being intubated twice and being in a critical condition, the boy survived the deadly disease. In other news, Malacanang believes President Rodrigo Duterte will sign ABS-CBN's provisional franchise. This was after the House of Representatives approved in second reading a bill that gives ABS-CBN a provisional franchise until October 31, 2020. Let's listen to the statement of Presidential Spokesperson Secretary Harry Roque.
It's not only the best move, it's the only move under our Constitution because it's very clear po no, na tanging Kongreso lang po ang pwedeng mag-grant ng franchise or mag-revoke ng franchise para sa mga broadcast companies. Inaasahan ko naman po na kung wala naman pong constitutional infirmity, pipirmahan naman po ito ng Presidente dahil pinarating na niya ang mensahe sa mga miyembro ng Kongreso, he is neutral, do your constitutional function.
The Senate Committee on Public Services is set to tackle the ABS-CBN provisional franchise bill on Tuesday. According to Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, who will lead the proceedings, one of the inquiries to be raised during the hearing is the role of the media network in information dissemination amid the COVID-19 pandemic. The House passed on second reading a bill seeking to grant provisional franchise to the media network until October of this year. House Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano says they are hoping to pass the measure on third and final reading on Monday. This is what Senator Win Gatchalian has to say. Meanwhile, Senate Majority Leader Miguel Zubiri is positive the hearing would be fast and simple. However, he is hoping that their counterparts in the lower house would consider to give the network a provisional franchise of not less than a year. Despite this, the Senate Majority Leader expressed optimism that the measure will be passed before Congress adjourns on June 3. The country's Foreign Affairs Department mounted another chartered flight via AirAsia to bring home 182 overseas Filipinos stranded in Thailand. This is the second DFA-funded flight from Thailand. To date, the total number of repatriated land-based Filipinos has reached over 8,000 since the Wuhan flight in February 2020, according to the DFA. Meanwhile, the Foreign Affairs Department confirms no new fatalities due to COVID-19 among Filipinos abroad. That's based on reports from our Foreign Service post. And there are only 12 new confirmed cases compared with 70 new recoveries recorded across the regions. Based on the latest tally, Europe and the Middle East remain to have the most confirmed cases among our nationals abroad, with almost 700 cases each. On the other hand, most recoveries are reported in the Asia and Pacific, now at 287 cases, while the most number of deaths remains in the Americas with 146 cases.
The PNP Internal Affairs Service will use their civilian lawyers to investigate the alleged birthday celebration of National Capital Region Police Director Police Major General Debold Sinas. Leah Ilagan will tell us why.
The PNP Internal Affairs Service, or IAS, has begun its investigation into the supposed birthday party of NCRPO Director, Police Major General Debold Sinas. IAS Inspector General Attorney Alfigar Triambolo explains that a civilian lawyer is conducting the investigation. This is to avoid bias and influence since high-ranking officials are involved. According to Triambolo, there are two spaces in the investigation. One, to correct what needs to be corrected, and two, individual liability of those involved. Triambolo adds they will not relieve Sinas from his post amid the probe.
Pagin magkamali tayo dito sa ating approach, baka ma-prejudice yung public interest. Itong mga tao ito yung mga leaders, mga official na nagpapatupad ng palisya ng gobyerno para labanan yung COVID crisis dito sa NCR. Ngayon, kung sa ating approach baka hindi maganda at ma-demoralize sila, apektado yung general welfare. Kailangan i-balance natin.
However, if proven guilty, the police officials involved will face charges.
Maraming mga possible violation, yung resolution ng 88, yung batas, yung sa mga krimelo, sa admin, marami po yun. Kaya nga sinabi ko, yung individual liability, dahil marami yan, depende yung degree ng responsibility.
The PNP Internal Affairs Service targets to finish the investigation next week. Leah Ilagan, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Presidential spokesperson Secretary Harry Roque reveals that a criminal case is now being readied to be filed tomorrow against NCRPO Chief Police Major General Debold Sinas and other senior police officials. This is in relation to the controversial celebration of the police official's birthday, which has been regarded as a violation of quarantine protocols imposed to fight the further spread of the new coronavirus. Secretary Roque adds, the PNP is also getting clearance from the Office of the President for the filing of administrative charges against the alleged violators for the same violation. Even Executive Secretary Salvador Medialdea has ordered the PNP Internal Affairs Service to investigate the NCRPO chief's controversial birthday event.
It's a significant development na no less than the Executive Secretary has ordered the investigation and that the results be forwarded to his office.
Typhoon Ambo continues to gain strength heading towards Bicol region. At 4 p.m. today, its eye was located in the vicinity of San Jose de Buan, Samar, with a maximum sustained winds of 155 kilometers per hour near the center with gustiness of up to 255 kilometers per hour. It was moving west at 15 kilometers per hour. It is expected to make a second landfall in Sorsogon tonight. The whole Bicol region, northern Samar, Biliran, and portions of Quezon, Samar, and eastern Samar are now under tropical cyclone wind signal number 3. Expect torrential rains and moderate or heavy damage in these areas. Signal number 2 is now hoisted in Laguna, Marinduque, Romblon, portions of Quezon, Batangas, and Leyte, and the rest of Samar and eastern Samar, while Metro Manila, Calabarzon, and Central Luzon are under signal number 1. Updates on the typhoon will be up in the next 3 hours. Meanwhile, Malacanang assures the government will still implement quarantine protocols in evacuation centers as first typhoon this year hits the country. Typhoon Ambo is expected to affect several parts of Visayas and southern Luzon as the country grapples with the coronavirus disease pandemic. According to presidential spokesperson Secretary Harry Roque, the government's disaster preparedness and response or Oplan Listo is already in full force. That includes relief assistance to people who will be affected by Ambo.
Sapat-sapat na po ang ating mga relief goods, handa na po ang ating mga evacuation centers at ipapatupad po ang social distancing on a per family basis. So yan naman po ay pinaghandaan na ng mga otoridad.
And for the news abroad, here's Kath Dumaraos live from Bangkok, Thailand. Kath, good evening.
Good evening, William, and of course to Diego and Harleen.
Kath, as we see it happening, several countries have begun easing up their coronavirus restrictions. What about in Thailand? What are the updates?
Well, here, William, the Thai government is preparing for the second stage of relaxing its measures to fight COVID-19 that will come this weekend. In addition, William, I will give you updates about the measures in Washington, D.C., USA, because it is quite different. Its mayor has actually extended stay-at-home orders there. Later on, I will give you more details why. And later, Jovic Bermos will tell us why the World Health Organization, or WHO, says the world has a long way to go in our COVID-19 fight.
All right, go ahead, Kath.
As Thailand prepares for the second stage of easing COVID-19 related restrictions this May 17 Sunday, the country's biggest shopping center developers are gearing up to reopen malls. Siam Piwat is deploying automatic temperature scanning robots, free face mask dispensers and disinfecting drones, while Central Retail Corporation is planning to put disinfectant robots, smart temperature sensors, and hand gel services. Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha is set to chair a meeting on Friday to decide if shopping centers and other retail operations will be allowed to open. Thailand reported one new coronavirus case, bringing the total to 3,018, and no additional deaths reported, leaving the accumulated toll at 56. Undersecretary for Food and Health Dr. Chui Taki says the Hong Kong government will closely observe the trend of the COVID-19 epidemic before determining whether to make some adjustments in social distancing measures imposed there. Dr. Chui explains that because of certain developments in the outbreak in April, the government considers it appropriate to relax some of the measures. He even says that early April was the peak of the COVID-19 outbreak. But since day one, there had been no stay-at-home orders, only social distancing measures. Earlier this month, the government lifted certain social distancing measures under two regulations on prevention and control of disease. Those include relaxing from 4 to 8 the number of people allowed in group gatherings in public places. Dr. Chui adds that all the considerations for relaxation or limited relaxation for that matter are based on epidemic data as well as views from the experts to the government. Meanwhile, in the USA, the District of Columbia, seat of the U.S. federal government, extends its stay-at-home order through June 8, the mayor has said. The stay-at-home order, intended to curb the spread of the novel coronavirus, had been scheduled to end on May 15th. Mayor Muriel Bowser left open the possibility that the U.S. Capitol could reopen sooner, explaining that if it hits certain metrics, including a declining number of cases over 14 days and sustained low transmission rate, she could move to open sooner. Washington has reported 6,584 cases of the coronavirus and 350 deaths so far. In Brazil, on the other hand, President Jair Bolsonaro has classified gyms and hair salons as essential businesses, and he defends his decision. This is although Brazil's confirmed cases of the novel coronavirus passed Germany, now at more than 190,000, like what Harleen reported. Now, European countries are beginning to lift lockdowns as the death toll in the region eases. However, in Brazil, the outbreak is still accelerating. Bolsonaro has ratcheted up his dispute with state governors this week with a decree classifying businesses such as gyms and hair salons as essential services, which are exempt from lockdowns. However, at least 10 governors have said they would not follow the decree. Bolsonaro wrote on social media, governors who do not agree with the decree can file lawsuits in court. He later threatened to take his own legal actions against them if they do not comply. And for transportation, specifically air travel, temperature screening and face masks could become common sights at airports, according to the CEO of Dubai Airport. Paul Griffith said on Wednesday those measures were designed to mitigate the spread of the new coronavirus. But physical distancing could make flying more expensive. That is because in order to keep some seats empty, ticket sales will be fewer. Around the world, governments, airports, and airlines are considering temporary safety measures to restart air travel, including mandatory temperature checks, wearing face masks, and keeping passengers apart. It is unclear when global travel will recover from the coronavirus pandemic, which has shattered demand and will partially depend on countries lifting their lockdowns. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization underscores the importance of carefully calculating the lifting of measures to fight the coronavirus, called by many as lockdown. WHO warns the world has a long way to go in the COVID-19 fight. Jovic Burmas explains why.
The World Health Organization warns that countries must remain on alert in their response to the coronavirus pandemic. WHO's head of emergencies program, Dr. Mike Ryan, during a press briefing yesterday said that the world is going on the path of finding a new normal for a long time.
There's a long way to go before there's going to be any bells unrung in this response. And as we've seen in some countries, even a small recurrence of disease can cause the need for a serious response in terms of the public health response. So I think we're going to have to remain on alert, stay the course, and ensure that we're ready to respond.
As WHO understands that many countries would like to get out of the different measures that are being taken by the country, lifting those measures must be carefully calculated.
If you reopen in the presence of a high degree of virus transmission, then that transmission may accelerate. If that virus transmission accelerates and you don't have the systems to detect it, it will be days or weeks before you know something's gone wrong. And by the time that happens, you're back into a situation where your only response is another lockdown.
Our recommendation is still the alert at any country should be at the highest level possible. And whatever measures we take should be a very phased one that reflects the country's situation.
Jovic Burmas, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
In other news, the World Health Organization leader was shocked to hear of the attack on a maternity hospital in Afghanistan's capital, Kabul. Death toll from the attack has risen to 24, including new mothers, pregnant women, and babies, according to a health ministry source. Tuesday's attack is threatening to derail a peace process being brokered by the United States. Tuesday was International Nurses Day.
As the world celebrated nurses, I was shocked and appalled to hear of the attack on an MSF hospital in Afghanistan, which led to the deaths of nurses, mothers, and babies. The weaponization of health is not helping anywhere.
The Taliban insurgents, with whom the United States has signed a troop withdrawal deal, denied any involvement in the attack, but that was met with skepticism by the Afghan government. Afghan President Ashraf Ghani on Tuesday after the attack ordered Afghan security forces to switch from an active defense mode to an offensive one and to start their operations against the enemies. And those are the reasons behind the news here in Thailand and other parts of the globe. Back to you, William.
Thank you, Kath Dumaraos, reporting live from Bangkok, Thailand. Stay safe.
The Tokyo Games on the shelf this year. All athletes can do now is train more, prepare, and wait when the official opening of the next Olympics. In Japan, a fencer hoping to head for the Olympics has found a different way to keep himself physically fit and ready for the fencing battle, hopefully in 2021. He's now a delivery guy. Ryo Miyake tells us why.
With his Olympics preparation in tatters, Japanese fencer Ryo Miyake has begun delivering food on his bicycle. With no access to a gym due to Japan's coronavirus lockdown, Miyake was looking for a way to make money and maintain his fitness at the same time. Having won silver in the men's team foil at London 2012, Miyake had a raft of sponsors backing him in the lead up to the games on home soil. But with all competitions cancelled and the Olympics pushed back a year, Miyake felt he couldn't accept sponsorship money in good conscience. Delivering food on his bicycle fits the bill for Miyake while sweating his way to one customer after another. Miyake said he earns about 2,000 yen or more than $18 a day, which added to his savings means he is surviving without sponsorship. Higher demand for food delivery due to the coronavirus pandemic also translates to more work for the likes of Miyake. He assures minimum contact with other people, obeying the policy of leaving food outside the client's doors.
Now, fencing has become a sport that doesn't fit with the current situation because we cannot practice without having people around. This is really regrettable. I wish to restart with a situation where everyone can train freely and without any concern.
Despite the rescheduling, the next Olympics will still be known as the Tokyo 2020 Games according to the International Olympic Committee. The Olympic flame will remain in Japan until the postponed games are held. Ryo Miyake, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Has a total of over 3,017 cases and more than 50 deaths since the outbreak escalated in January, but it has eased up restrictions. Now, a restaurant there has a unique way to remind diners about social distancing. Nina Armilia reports.
A Vietnamese restaurant in Bangkok, Thailand has come up with a cute way of imposing social distancing measures among its diners. Have you ever sat with a panda before? Well, here you can sit down and enjoy the delicacies served hot or cold as you like them, with the company of a quiet but cute stuffed panda. Under social distancing guidelines, customers have to sit diagonally from one another if they are eating out together, while the pandas occupy the other seats. Restaurant owner Natwut Rojanapan Kul thought that customers who come alone would feel all the more lonely after being in isolation at home for so long if they had to sit down facing an empty seat. Here, well, the panda tactic seems to be working. 25-year-old Sawit Chaipuk, who was dining at the restaurant for the first time in months, said the stuffed panda makes him feel less lonely eating by himself. Thailand has relaxed some restrictions since May 3. The Thai government is continuing to urge the public to wear masks, practice good hygiene, and maintain social distancing measures. If you are in Bangkok and plan on grabbing a bite in this restaurant, enjoy the company of a stuffed panda. You can even speak to it. Just don't expect it will talk back to you. Nina Armilio, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
And those are the reasons behind the news, May 14, 2020. I am Harleen Delgado.
Reasons we deliver to you as they unfold. I am William Theo. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
And I am Angelo Castro III. Because we need to know, we will always ask why.